Aside from Nahida, in the Genshin Impact 3.2 patch, there will be the rerun of 3 characters that we have previously known about, which are Yoimiya and finally Chao and Yaemiko in the second half of the patch. Now these characters has been in Genshin Impact for a long time now, and the community has generally have a really good conclusion on where these characters stands in terms of a overall meta strength or power level. So with that being said, instead of making 3 separate videos covering each individual character, I figured I'll just make one video going over the pros and cons of each character and if you should be pulling on them. This is a new format of a video, so let me know if you prefer this format or you just like this format in general. And as always, if you like the video, don't forget to subscribe. It is free and help me out a lot, and let's get started. Starting off, we have Yoimiya, who is a single target pyro carry, and she's generally played against boss chamber such as Magu Genki or PM Mei. The biggest strength of Yoimiya is to be able to dish out very good consistent single target damage while being extremely easy to play. The only real thing you have to do on Yoimiya is to click on her elemental skill and then just spam your attack to do a bunch of single target damage. And if you pair her with a character like Zhongli, that is even much easier. Generally speaking, in terms of the Genshin Impact meta, Yoimiya are draft into single target heavy team like Yoimiya, Yelan Xingqiu's Bennett, or Yoimiya, Yunjin, Zhongli Xingqiu's to do a bunch of single target damage as well as vaporizing your Yoimiya arrow. One of the biggest drawback of Yoimiya though is the lack of ability to do any AoE damage at all, as her arrows are auto-targeted onto a single enemy at a time. That means no matter how hard you try, you can only hit one enemy at a time and could really suffer against chamber with multiple enemies. And while you could put her into team comp that kind of have good AoE, like for example the Taser composition using Yoimiya officials and Beidou, generally speaking they're just not really recommended, and there are always much better composition to do that job. There are other minor downsides such as Yoimiya being quite dependent on a shielder, namely Zhongli, as interrupting her attack string, which generally speaking results in a great loss of damage. But the biggest downside of Yoimiya is that she's unfortunately just being outclassed by other pyro characters like Xiangling or Hu Tao. The unfortunate news is that strictly speaking in terms of power level, Hu Tao and Xiangling is just stronger than Yoimiya, with a character like Hu Tao just dishing out better single target damage than Yoimiya, while also having the potential of doing AoE damage by having multiple enemy being attacked at the same time within her charge attack. However, an important thing to call is that Hu Tao is significantly harder to play than Yoimiya, with her having multiple unique techniques such as dash cancel or jump cancel that could be difficult to pull off certain player, especially on mobile. In addition to the fact that her elemental skill kind of drain her HP, which just make her more vulnerable than Yoimiya in general. If you are looking for ease of use rather than power level, then I think Yoimiya should be a consideration over Hu Tao, but not necessarily a must, as if you're a player who heavily value meta strength, then I would prefer to run Hu Tao. On a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of how likely would I recommend this character for a player who is looking for meta strength, where 1 is a character so weak that you really shouldn't pull, where 5 is a character that is kind of meta changing and you should really consider them, I would put Yoimiya at a 2.5, which means that generally speaking she is a little below average simply because again outclassed by unfortunately other characters. But if you want to pull for her and you value ease of use, then she is by no means weak either. Moving on to the next characters, we have Yaemiko, which will be coming to the second half of the Genshin Impact patch. Now, Yaemiko is played as a electro sub DPS and it compete with the same role as Fischl's. While Yaemiko can be a Fischl replacement, which means that for most team where you will slot in Fischl's, you can also use Yaemiko as well. Generally speaking, Fischl, especially at Constellation 6, is just preferred over Yaemiko, as she is to be argued to be stronger. You can draft Yai into team composition that would like a electro sub DPS such as Raiden Yai or Tignari Yai. However, a better use case of Yaemiko is actually to pair her with Fischl's and to complement Fischl's. Rather than trying to replace Fischl's in a electro sub DPS slot, you just put both of them together to create a very strong pairing, and you can use that pairing in team comp such as Aggravate or Sucrose Taser. An example team comp are something like Nahida, Kazuha followed by Yai Fischl to do a really strong Aggravate team, or Sucrose, Yai Fischl, Xingqiu to do a Taser team. One of the most common misconceptions about Yaemiko though is that she has energy recharge problem because she has a really high energy recharge cost on her elemental burst. While it is true that she does have the highest energy recharge cost in the entire Genshin Impact at a 90 energy cost for her elemental burst, the truth is you're actually better off by bearing pure damage and not worrying about energy recharge at all. The reason of that is because that is just going to be yielding you higher performance, and you can just simply cast your elemental burst whenever you do have it available, such as once every 2 rotation, maybe even 3 rotation, rather than having to worry about building high energy energy recharge on Yaemiko and then trying to cast your burst on every single rotation, which is unfortunately just not worth it. What is true about Yaemiko though is that in my personal experience, she's quite frustrating to play, especially with the EEEQ combo, which if you're not aware of, is how you cast her elemental burst. In order to utilize Yaemiko's elemental burst fully, you have to first deploy 3 totem with your elemental skill. However, as your elemental burst destroy those totem, you have to recast them, which is why you do EEEQ, which means you first deploy your 3 totem, cast your elemental burst, then recast your 3 elemental skill. The problem here is that during each cast of your elemental skill, you don't get any kind of iframe, and because you have to cast 3 of them twice or 6 times in total, it results in you spending very long field time not having any kind of invulnerability frame, not just doing a lot of damage or you just maneuvering around. And because of that, it can make her feel very vulnerable and could be very frustrating to play, and it's one of the most common complaints in Genshin Impact about Yaemiko. After all, Yaemiko is a pretty solid electro sub DPS, and together with Fischl's, she can create a very solid electro sub DPS duo. But if you're not looking for a second electro sub DPS because your Fischl's is already satisfying enough, or you're more focused on other use cases such as casting Fischl, then you don't have to pull for Yaemiko. On a scale of 5 on a recommendation for meta player where you're looking for meta strength, Yaemiko hovers somewhere around 3 for me, which is a character that's okay, and you can pull for her if you want. You don't have to pull for her if you don't want, especially if you're not looking to draft something like the electro sub DPS duo. Finally, we have Childe, which actually has been a hot minute since we have last seen this character's rerun. Childe is mostly played as a Hydro enablers or driver within the Genshin Impact meta, and it's generally speaking only really played in one single team, which is often referred to as the International, made up of Childe, Bennett, Xiangling, and Kazuha, but it is also fine to use Sucrose to replace Kazuha instead in case you don't have Kazuha. While Childe only fit into one team composition, the International team, historically speaking, the International team is some of the most dominant Genshin Impact meta team by far, and is often regarded to be one of the best, if not arguably the best team in the entire Genshin Impact, and it's just very flexible. It is good in almost every scenario, including AoE content, single target content, or boss content. In the International team, Childe's main job is to supply a really good amount of AoE Hydro through his normal attack as well as Riptide, which allows Xiangling to do AoE vaporize damage through her power needle. However, don't underestimate Childe's personal damage, as he contributes to a very high amount of the damage within the team as well, so he does a lot more than just providing Hydro to his team. Just like every other character in Genshin Impact, you could play Childe in other team as well, such as Taser with Fischl's Beidou, or Freeze team with something like Ganyu as a sub DPS cryo, but generally speaking, they're not really what recommended to Childe's player, and usually the International team is just the go-to team for Childe. Something very important to call though about the International team, and that is while it is one of the best performing team in the entire Genshin Impact, it is also one of the most difficult team to pick up as well, with very difficult to execute combo or just to play in general, such as doing something like Kazuha double swirl or Sucrose double swirl could take a long time to get used to. Never to mention that Childe doesn't have the interrupt resistance or iframe that certain other characters have, like Raiden Shogun or Zhongli, which make him more vulnerable than other characters in general. The International team is significantly harder to play than most other meta team in Genshin Impact, and should be something you really consider before you pull for Childe. Are you down for the challenge, and are you willing to learn how to properly execute his combo as well as practice how to do those combos? And if you're willing to do that, I promise you Childe International team is one of the most satisfying team to play in the entire game, but I can understand if some people just want to play a easier characters, in which case you can consider other team like Raiden Nationals or pulling a Zhongli. Overall, on a scale of 1 to 5 for meta recommendation, I would put Childe around 3.5, which is generally above average, as he will be a character that will be account changing for you, but you do have to consider that he is very hard to play and you have to learn to pick up his team International, which is again one of the strongest team in Genshin Impact, suitable in almost any scenario, just quite difficult to play. But with that being said, that is going to be for today's video, where we talk about if you should be pulling on these characters as they get rerun. Let me know if you like this format of video, and again, this kind of video is meant to be shorter in general, so hopefully this video helped more people out, and if you did, don't forget to drop a like or comment below, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You guys know it, and I'll see you guys all next time.